In this lesson, we're going to break down the mortgage, right? So step one, big picture, what is a mortgage? Well, of course, a mortgage is a security device used to secure repayment of a debt, right? So a really simple definition. Probably the best way to visualize this, though, is to put yourself in the position of the lender for a second, right? Imagine that you're a lender and you're going to loan somebody millions of dollars to go purchase some piece of real estate, maybe a house, maybe it's a commercial building, maybe it's just a piece of land, whatever it is, right? You're going to loan somebody millions of dollars, right? Before you do this, right, as a lender, before you just hand over $1 million or millions of dollars to a person, right, that you've never met before, that you maybe don't have that much information about, right, what are you going to want to do, right? You're going to want to have some security here. I mean, what if this person just takes that $1 million loan you've given them and then runs off into the sunset and you can never find them again? They just take the money and run, right? Well, without a mortgage, without a security device in place, it's going to be really hard for you to recover your proceeds, right? If you can never locate this person who defaulted on the loan, right, that's going to be a real problem. Or what if that person just becomes completely insolvent, they're bankrupt and can't repay any of the debt to you, right? You're just out millions of dollars potentially without a security device in place. So what security devices do and what the mortgage allows a lender to do is say, okay, well, once you default on the loan, it's not the end of the world for me. I can still force a sale of that property, right, that you used the proceeds to go try to buy, right? I can force a sale of that property, right, and use the proceeds of that sale to recover the debt, right, to recover the loan proceeds I gave to you, right? So it's a way to secure repayment of debt, right? It adds security for the lender, right? So that's what the mortgage is, right? And it's important to recognize that the mortgage is one way of many ways that you can secure repayment of a debt. It's just really commonly used in the real property context, which is why we're going over it here, right? A mortgage is a security device used to secure repayment of a debt, right? So important to recognize that there is a difference between the note and the mortgage. And really, we can think about this in terms of like terminology. There's three key terms we really want to be aware of in the mortgage process, right? Again, we have the note, the mortgage, and the foreclosure. These are three different, separate things. We don't want to use these terms interchangeably. They each have a different meaning, right? The note is simply the promise, right? The note is the borrower's promise to repay the debt or the loan. The mortgage is the device, the security device, that mechanism that provides security to the note by allowing the lender to force a foreclosure sale to recover the outstanding debt, right? So the note is the borrower's promise to repay the debt. The mortgage is the security device that secures repayment of that debt. And the foreclosure is the result, right? The foreclosure sale is the result that happens if the borrower defaults on the loan. That's the execution of the security device results in the foreclosure sale, right? That's the way that the lender goes out and recovers the proceeds to the loan that they gave to the borrower, right? That outstanding debt can be recovered by forcing a sale of the property, right? That foreclosure sale is going to net proceeds. Those proceeds can be used by the lender to recover, right, the debt that is owed to them, right? So those are kind of your three key terms, right? The note, the mortgage, and the foreclosure sale. Again, the note is just the borrower's promise to repay. The mortgage is what we use to secure the note, right? And ultimately, the foreclosure sale is what's going to happen when the borrower defaults on the loan, right? The foreclosure sale will give the lender a way to recover the proceeds of the loan that they gave to the borrower. Right, so we have two major types of mortgages we want to be aware of, right? We have the purchase money mortgage and the future advance mortgage. Right? A purchase money mortgage is a mortgage where the borrower takes out a loan for the purpose of purchasing property. Future advance mortgages are mortgages where a line of credit is used for home equity, construction, business, right? Commercial purposes. There's a lot of different things a line of credit could be used for. Future advance mortgages, we can think of this as kind of like the second mortgage, right? Where the purchase money mortgage is usually the initial purchase mortgage, and then you have second, third, fourth mortgages are usually in the form of future advance mortgages. Right, so the purchase money mortgage is where the borrower takes out a loan for the purpose of purchasing property. This is probably what you're most familiar with when you think about the mortgage. Right, say you want to go to a bank, or say you want to buy a new home, right? You want to purchase property that costs $500,000. Well, maybe you don't have $500,000 to go buy this house, right? Say maybe you and your family, you want to go move into this new nice home. It costs $500,000, $500,000. Well, say you only have $100,000, right? No problem. You can go to a bank and apply for a loan, right? So you go to the bank, you say, hey, look, I can put $100,000 down, but I need another $400,000 to purchase this home, right? Well, if the bank grants that to you, right, grants that loan to you and secures, right, your promise to repay that loan with a mortgage, right, we would call that a purchase money mortgage, where the borrower, right, is actually taking out a loan for the purpose of purchasing property. The loan proceeds, right, the purchase money being used to purchase the property is coming from the bank, right? The borrower takes out a loan for the purpose of purchasing property, right? That's the purchase money mortgage. It's usually the most senior mortgage. It's the first mortgage, right, that usually is going to occur because it's the mortgage where you're actually acquiring the property, right? You're using the proceeds of that loan, right, to actually purchase the property. And then after that, you usually can have like a second or third mortgage on these future advance mortgages, right, where lines of credits can be extended by either the same bank or you could go to a different bank. You could go to different lenders and get a second mortgage, a line of credit. Maybe you want to renovate the kitchen, right? So you purchase the house, you use the purchase money mortgage to go purchase this new house, but say you want to renovate the kitchen. It's going to cost $50,000 to renovate the kitchen. Well, you could get a future advance mortgage from a different creditor, right? A line of credit to go renovate your kitchen, right? And again, that loan could be secured by a mortgage on the house, right, that you just purchased, right? So you'd have one mortgage, the purchase money mortgage, to the original lender for $400,000, and then you'd take out a second mortgage for $50,000, right, to get a loan for $50,000 that's secured by a mortgage, right, from lender number two, right? And we call that a future advance mortgage or a second mortgage. Right, so that's the purchase money mortgage and the future advance mortgage. And we'll see that can be really important, right? What this is laying out the foundation for is it can be really important in terms of the priority rules, right? So you can see where this is going, where problems can start to arise. If you're taking loans from multiple lenders and using the same piece of property as the security device, for the security device, you know, what happens when you default on the loan, right? So they're gonna force a sale of that property. Proceeds are generated, right? What creditors get to come in first to the proceeds, right? Who gets to get paid first from the proceeds of that foreclosure sale when you've got multiple loans from multiple lenders and you used the same piece of property, right, for the mortgage, right? We'll see when we get to the priority rules, it can depend on, well, was it a purchase money mortgage? Was it a future advance mortgage? These classifications, and we'll see there's even some sub-classifications of the future advance mortgage. Understanding these classifications will be important in determining the priority of lenders who get to have priority to the proceeds from the foreclosure sale. Right, but before we get into priority, there's still one other issue that's important, that's commonly tested, and this is what happens when the borrower transfers the property. Right, imagine that you go out and you buy that home for $500,000, right? So you put $100,000 down and then you get a loan for $400,000 from the bank, and the bank secures that loan with a mortgage, right? So you've got that $400,000 loan secured by a mortgage on, call it Green Acre, right? Well, what happens if the borrower goes out and immediately transfers that property to someone else, right? Now, who's liable to the bank for that $400,000 loan, for that original mortgage? Who's going to be liable? Is it the original borrower or the transferee, the person who just bought this home, or is it both? How do we deal with transfers of real property that are encumbered by mortgages? Right, well, if the borrower transfers the property, the borrower remains personally liable after the transfer unless the lender releases the borrower from his obligations. Right, so typically what happens when you're going to sell real property, right, that's encumbered with a mortgage? Well, usually, right, the proceeds of the sale are used to repay the debt to the creditor, to the lender, right? So you sell the home, say, for $500,000, right? Well, if you owed $400,000 on your loan to the lender, that $400,000 that you owned is repaid with the proceeds. You sold it for $500,000, so you can repay the bank back the $400,000 in outstanding debt that you had. And when that happens, once you fulfill your obligations, right, you're going to get a release, right, from that mortgage, right? The lender is going to release the borrower from his obligations under the loan and the mortgage. So you get a release, right? The proceeds of the sale are used to repay off all the obligations, and then the lender is going to give you a release, right? So the new owner, the transferee, takes that property free of any encumbrance of that mortgage, right? You're released, right? So nobody's liable. That would be kind of what usually happens. But of course, and on the bar exam and in real property fact patterns, that's rarely what happens, right? So what you're going to end up happening is the lender is not going to release the borrower. For whatever reason, the borrower doesn't repay the lender the money, right? And so the borrower, right, doesn't get that release from the lender. The question is, well, who's liable after the transfer? Is it the original borrower or is it the transferee? And we'll see that the original borrower always remains liable. The question is really if the transferee becomes liable, right? And the transferee takes, so it depends on how the transferee takes title, right? If the transferee takes title subject to the mortgage, the transferee is not personally liable upon default. So the key here is you want to look for the language that's used, right? And this is pretty much always given to you in the fact pattern. But your default standard is that the transferee takes the title subject to the mortgage, meaning the transferee is not personally liable upon default. However, if the transferee assumes the mortgage, the transferee is primarily liable, and then the original borrower is going to be secondarily liable upon default, right? So you just want to look for that language. It's usually pretty easy, right? If you see that the transferee is taking title subject to the mortgage, he's not liable. If he assumes the mortgage, right, that means he's taking on the mortgage, and now he's actually primarily liable, right? If he can't pay, then secondarily the original borrower is going to be liable. So in that case, the lender, right, could sue both of them to try to recover the proceeds upon default. If the transferee assumes the mortgage, right, if he takes title subject to the mortgage, then he's not personally liable. Right now, usually, right, to assume the mortgage, right, that has to be done expressly. You have to expressly, right, say, I'm assuming the mortgage. You'll see the language in the fact pattern, right, where the transferee is actually assuming the mortgage. You'll see the exact language, transferee assumed the mortgage. That means he's taking on personal liability for the mortgage. However, sometimes it is possible in a minority of jurisdictions that you can assume the mortgage just by paying the mortgage payments, right? So essentially, even if the transferee takes title subject to the mortgage, if the transferee starts making the payments on the mortgage for the original borrower, right? If he does this long enough, right, that can implicitly create basically that the transferee assumed the mortgage, right? So this would be in a minority of jurisdictions if the transferee starts making the mortgage payments for the borrower and then stops making those payments and then there's default, right? Well, at that point in some jurisdictions, in the minority, we're going to say because he started making those payments, the transferee assumed the mortgage implicitly, even though it was never expressly stated that the transferee assumed the mortgage by making the payments on behalf of the original borrower, right? That basically implicitly means that the transferee assumed the mortgage. That would be applied in a minority of jurisdictions, just something to look out for that I've seen tested, right? But otherwise, right, it's just the language, right? So if the borrower transfers the property, right, the borrower remains personally liable after the transfer unless the lender releases the borrower from his obligations. So either way, right, the original borrower is going to stay liable. It's just whether the original borrower is primarily liable or secondarily liable, right? And that depends on the language used in the conveyance, right? If the transferee takes title subject to the mortgage, right, the transferee is not personally liable upon default, meaning the original borrower is solely liable upon default. If the transferee assumes the mortgage, then the transferee does become primarily liable upon default, and the borrower is secondarily liable. Right, so that's how we deal with transfers of property. Pretty straightforward, actually. Finally, we can get to priority and foreclosure, right? So again, a foreclosure is a forced sale of property where the proceeds of the sale. Thank you so much for watching this video preview of our Legal Education Accelerator Program, or LEAP for short. If you would like to see the conclusion of this video and gain full access to our entire 1L and 2L video library, integrated outlines, streamable audio versions, additional practice exams with explanations, and much more, we invite you to head over to our website and join the thousands of law students who have already enrolled. To get started with your no-risk free trial today, simply click the link in the description box below or visit www.studicata.com/leap.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm currently a law student at South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiva and I'm currently a law student at Southwestern.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am a first year student at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I used the Studicata study video series last semester to help me prepare mostly for contracts, and I actually made an A+ in contracts last semester, which I greatly dedicate to the Studicata videos.
By using Studicata to help me prepare for my final exam, I was able to score the highest grade out of my class on the final and even have my essay distributed as the model answer. Not to mention I had done quite poorly on the midterm and was struggling throughout the whole course of the semester, understanding the material and keeping up with lectures.
Because of the Studicata video lectures, I was able to go into my exams with a feeling of confidence. I didn't have to worry about what the rules of law were or how I was going to organize my answer to an essay question.
I would absolutely recommend the Studicata series and their online course materials to anyone. I think that they are not like professor lectures that you might find online or other outside study materials that you may encounter. I think that the Studicata videos really focus on not only ensuring that you understand the material that you're going to encounter on your final, but they also help you to understand kind of the best method for test taking, and they really break down how to approach each problem and the best ways to tackle certain methods on testing, and I think that's really important, and I think it's really special. I don't see that anywhere else in any of the other online resources that I've found. So I would certainly recommend Studicata to anyone who is studying in law school right now. Good luck on your studying and you're going to do great.
I would definitely recommend Studicata to anybody watching this video. Give it a chance. I'm positive that you will love it, that you will get a lot out of it, and that you will be happy that you gave it a chance. I definitely am. I know I will be using Studicata in the future.
And I cannot thank Studicata enough for getting me through my first semester of law school. I will definitely continue to watch the Studicata video lectures throughout my law school career, and I highly recommend that any future or current law student do the same.